We have the finest DFS players on earth. Just so much IQ in this room, and I get to just ask them questions for the next 30 to 45 to an hour long to 60 minutes. And I actually have one that I think is, first off, a serious question, and I am actually interested in all of your individual answers, because someone said this to me jokingly the other day. They were showing me their post-contest showdown sims, and they were showing how in their post-contest stuff, a lot of the best pre-lock sim ROI lineups were actually horrible because the dupe numbers were way wrong. Like the lineups in his stuff that was like, oh, this lineup is 97% sim ROI. Like you want to play this a lot. Ended up in post-contest sims actually being negative sim ROI, and then showing the pre-lock sims, the negative ROI teams. It was spurred on because the team that won the other night was like a negative 47% sim ROI team, and it was like a relatively low dupe winner. So the question, and we can spend however long we want talking about this, is has the evolution of sims on the individual products, and you guys can talk about this for NBA, for Showdown, whatever, do you need to factor in the fact that some much larger percentage of the field is using a sim product into your sim, like a snake eating its own tail sort of thing? I'll toss that to Dan first.
So when it comes to ownership, I think the answer is yes, but indirectly. Like, so as just as a general feature of how ownership works, as ownership gets more efficient, it gets harder to zig when the field is zagging. So, like, I haven't made any attempt to measure this, but if people are using more sim products and feeding them similar ownership numbers, those ownership numbers are kind of self-correct more towards efficient, right? So, you know, if 20% of the field is using, let's just make up Saber Sims ownership and using their sims, it's going to fill in a lot of the gaps that Saber Sim thought there were in terms of value. So, you know, if there's a certain kind of construction and they happen to think that it's underowned, it's going to be less underowned than they thought it was because people are going to find that and plug that hole, right? So I think at the level of ownership, this is always going to be a problem. It's not even necessarily sim specific. It's just like how many people are leveraging the ownership projections and how much of that is changing what the actual ownership is, right? It's just a numbers game. I don't know if that answers the question, but
it does. So it doesn't exactly answer my question because it's more about this, where, God, what is even the right way to say this? Trusting your own sim ROI pre-lock stuff as being accurate, right? Because I can only speak for this myself, using our stuff. Obviously a lot of the pre-lock sim ROI stuff looks really good because it's our tool built off of our, right? And then I ran it through some post-contest stuff, and the sim ROIs have still been positive, but the bands have been so much narrower. And there are a lot of complex reasons for that, and I'm sure you guys have a ton of experience with that. But I'm wondering, I'm just kind of wondering what that inflection point might be for like NFL specifically, like a huge disparity between the pre and post lock.
Well, I think so. There's actually a few things there. First of all, just the idea of comparing your pre-lock sim EV and your post-lock sim EV is very important if you're trying to calibrate a sim system, right? You're trying to evaluate how good it is. That's like step number one in terms of your evaluation of how well you are both modeling the field, you know, in terms of combos and things, and also getting the ownership numbers right. So, I mean, I think this is much harder than a lot of people realize at the lineup level to predict dupe numbers. Like I went fairly far down the rabbit hole, not like the whole hog thing, but like I spent like a couple weeks looking at it for NFL, doing all sorts of, you know, modern techniques to try and predict dupe rates for lineups. And like I found like the best I could do, even at the sort of middle range, I was often off by about 50%. So I would think this lineup, there's 8 of them, but there's actually 12. Or I thought there were going to be 20 and there's 30. Like, those deltas are big enough to move your quote unquote plus EV lineup into neutral or negative EV if you're off by that much, depending on what the estimate was. So I wouldn't take any pre-lock sim ROI number too seriously, just as a rule. Hopefully, whatever system you're using, whether it's someone's site or your own stuff, it's at least giving you information. Like the lineups that look better in your sim ROI should historically perform better than the ones that look worse. Like, I would think of it more of like, is this system providing a meaningful ordering for me? Like, are the things that it says are better actually better than the things it thinks are worse? I know that sounds, it's way less of a bar to clear, but honestly, even getting that right is non-trivial. So that's sort of like, if I were looking at this as, in sort of a data sciencey way, that's what I would be looking at. Like, how often are the top 10% of lineups actually top 10% ROI lineups? Forgetting the specific number,
All right, I've got one for you to then, because there was this really good example of this for last week in terms of how bad the ownership was, the ownership projections. You had Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, all projected for between like 22 and 25 full PPR points. And the ownership projections were pretty flat. I think McCaffrey was like clearly the third of that bunch, and he ended up being the third most owned. But Bijan ended up basically doubling Taylor, like 65% to 30%. In your stuff before lock, are you making any contingencies for that? Or are you adjusting the bands, or are you just taking it like, okay, these guys are kind of all in their same tier and I'll let the computer do its work from there?
I think I might have had that let me check. I can give you my exact. But the 8.8 Bijan to the 9.5 Taylor made a big difference.
Yes,
and that's why you saw that. So even if they're projecting similar for value, you need the 700. You're saying they're all kind of close?
Like, they were, I guess, depending on which ownership projections, like they were all relatively close.
While I look for that, I wanted to clarify on the last thing for the showdown ones, the ones that are like viewed as like high ROI, are those the ones that are constantly being over duped to the, like, once a contest runs, there's always more than what it actually says?
It's always, it basically will kind of depend because so many people are using Saber and then so many people are using the solver. So if there is a huge discrepancy projection wise there, I'm having trouble thinking of like a specific player example, but just a couple times this year there's been a projection provider way over indexes on one player. Let's call it Noah Brown for the Commanders in a showdown slate. And it's like, this guy, we have him at $2,000 for 8.6 points. But we have his projected ownership at 8% or whatever. So that type of guy ends up way over indexing. And then in a kind of surprising way, ends up being in a ton of the duplicated lineups.
I'm just asking about like the ones that the highest duped teams are those actually the ones that are expected to be the most duped? Are those actually the most duped?
That would be probably a better question for Adam, actually. I would assume, well, maybe not. I don't know, maybe a better question for Dan, because I'm not doing too much. Anything that is post-lock based, this is someone communicating this to me, not me doing my own analysis.
I think in terms of, to your question, in terms of like the super deduper overdupes lineups, I think those are easier to predict, in my experience, and I assume the sites do better. And just as like a numerical fact, like, if lineup X, should be owned like 100 times, and the prediction is 150 and it's 220, we don't, like, as a practical matter, it doesn't matter. It's too owned, and so hopefully filtering that out. And it's also just the delta as a percentage matters less for EV. So like, if a highly duped lineup is a little bit more highly duped, like, it moves the EV down a bit. But like, if your lineup you thought was a smash at 4 dupes is duped 9 times, maybe it's not so good.
Yeah.
Adam, thoughts?
Yeah, I was just thinking about like, so I'm not going to even claim that I'm good at showdown. I have no idea if I am, because I do find the dupe problem very difficult. But it is like from a process standpoint, because like obviously I agree with everything everybody else is saying. I definitely have like a more rudimentary showdown process than I do for like non-dupey sports and stuff. Where to Dan's point, like I'm using a lot more just like ranking stuff. You know, I'm looking at sim ROI, but I'm not necessarily just like selecting my lineups by sim ROI or anything like that. With the assumption that like because of how sensitive sims are and how sensitive dupe projections are going to be, et cetera, like that input or that data you're getting is just so much more volatile that like I still use a lot of the same like kind of ranking process stuff that I was using pre-sim with like Fantasy Cruncher, 5 years ago, 6 years ago for Showdown, as opposed to sports where I know that like it's going to be sensitive to ownership, it's going to be sensitive to projection, but like I don't have to worry about dupes and getting that right, where I can trust the outputs that I'm getting more.
Yeah, plus with Showdown, you can actually like it's small enough that you can eyeball it too. Like you can generate a bunch of lineups and you say, oh, here's this band of ROI. And it's all, this quarterback paired with this receiver and this third cheap piece. And it likes those. And then you can see another tranche where it has some other feature. And you could just say, you know what, I'm going to take, it likes all of these. It likes some more than others. I'm going to take some from this category and some from that category, et cetera.
Okay, I think the quick workaround for that, I don't know where I said before, but like at a certain point I said there was going to be like this over simmed spot. And it's easier to arrive there for Showdown. You kind of just take the stock teams of whatever sim you're using, and maybe you just take the stock teams for like all of the services. Do like whatever generic setting that is going to be used the most frequently, and like say take like from that the top 20 ROIs and see the dupe numbers for those. You just like take that number, maybe like multiply it by 3 or something, and then subtract 5 to like account for like overdoing it. But something like that is probably going to get you closer to how many the number of like dupes for those there are.
Right.
I also haven't tested it, but I'd be interested. Like I would guess that there's some sort of signal in like, again, just using SaberSim as an example. If you build your lineups, you sim them, etc., I would guess that the lineups that are predicted for a healthy amount of dupes and have a good sim ROI probably tend to be like more accurately represented than ones where it's like this has a great sim ROI and nobody else is playing it. Like I would guess that like at least in terms of like strength of lineup, like the one that is projected for a bunch of dupes and it's telling you is really good is probably just a really good lineup that also is going to be duped a good amount. Whereas I would be like really, really cautious of the ones where it's just like, yeah, you're the smartest person in the world because nobody else is going to play the best lineup in this contest.
Right. And that comes down to the sensitivity of your prediction, right? Like there are lineups that in theory are only plus ROI if you're the only one playing them. But so yeah, the closer to that level you become, the more vulnerable you are to mistakes in lineup dupe count, right?
I would say too. Also, Davis said when his initial question was the site says this amount of dupes, and then when I look back, it's like way more. So it could also be like a chicken or egg thing. What if it's just a bad projection? It doesn't necessarily have to mean that the sites are moving it, but they probably are. And I think that's really your real question is you're certain the sites are moving stuff. How can I make money from knowing this?
The question is more this is that for NFL specifically, I think for NBA, MLB, MMA and stuff, I think the processes are different for two reasons. First being field size, second being basically individuals' opinions can end up swinging so much of the pool in NFL. If you think about it, at the end of the day, it's a pit like why I don't know. It's a game this weekend. Let's say Roma Dunze and DJ Moore are both ruled out for the Bears. and all the projections providers, let's say the Bears team total doesn't change much, and one of the projections providers says it's all Olamide Zaccheaus, and another one says it's all Luther Burden, and then another one says it's actually all funneling to Colston Loveland. Like, those opinions that are, sure, they can be backed by data and historical research and stuff, but at the end of the day, like, the only one who really knows is Ben Johnson, maybe, even if that, it might not even be Ben Johnson. But those decisions, because of the way it works, are going to have huge impacts on the player pool in terms of what people are doing, which is just a highlight of what I'm getting at, which is that NFL DFS is such a meta game at the highest level right now, because everyone, even phone shitter bro, Brian, phone shitter bro knows about Sims and knows, dude, the Sims just say, actually, we should have just been playing the best plays the whole time. And it's more about duplicated ownership, really, if you think about it. And in the closing line value, like, or not closing line value, but discrepancy between projected ownership and actual ownership. And that, obviously, people are still playing dog shit lineups, but the texture of the dog shit lineups is a lot different than it would have been 5 years ago, because the dog shit is actually less about how they project. Wasn't really a question, but that's more just a general. It's more just a general thought.
I do think your initial question was something else, and you pivoted right there. But that's fine. We can talk about, because the projections not being right, I think, is an important point, because, well, one, like Yuta's idea for how to leverage this idea of going to the site and then adjusting their number. Well, they should be doing that themselves. And why aren't they? Because they have that data. It should be pretty easy. They should know how much they're moving it. So then maybe the number's flawed to begin with if they're not taking that extra step.
It's because that's the number that's changing the end number.
It's hard. It's a circular problem, right?
Right. So we'll change it yourself. You should know, like, when, especially at this point, when we put this number out, this is how much it moves the market ourselves. So we should change that number, especially like ETR, some site that is trying to do their best. And secondarily, the projections are for large field almost always. Like, there's some coming out with smaller stuff, so that tells you that if you do a little legwork in these other size fields and make up ownership yourself and come up with your own dupe number, or dupe number based on ownership, you could benefit for sure that way too.
I wanted to stop on Davis's comment about Sims saying you should just play the best plays more. I think there's at least two different things going on. One is that, and this is the part that I agree with. One is that it's easy to make a mistake by not realizing how many different highly projected lineups are available to you. So, like, if you are doing stuff in an old style in a naive way, not really using an optimizer intelligently, let's say, and using a well-known projection source, you might think, well, all this shit is overowned. Well, that could just be because you've driven into the same, like, little strategic cul-de-sac as everybody else who used the same tools as you, same projections as you, and wasn't really thoughtful about it. When it turns out you could still get lots of other really highly projected things if you just changed a few things about how you do it. And it's one of the things that better sim products will get you to, is it might show you lineups you may not have conjured up yourself if left to your own device. So that part is true. But there's also a part about it that I think is not true, and that could not be true. And it's that, like, all these sim products, as we've talked about ad nauseum, take their own assumptions seriously. So one of those assumptions is, like, my projections are good, my ownership projections are good. Hey, the rest of the world isn't playing all of the plays I think are best. So not only are they highly projected, they're also underowned. So just play the things that my thing says is the best, and your lineups are plus CP. So that part of the story is just about bias, right? It's about taking our own data too seriously. So I just wanted to bring that up.
I've been
Also, as
thinking
an aside to that,
Go ahead, Adam.
if you're using a product where you have the ability that gives you range of outcomes, it's always something to check too. Like if a sim model is just like sticking too close to medians relative to actual performance, it's going to tell you to play the highest projected guys more than you should be, for example.
Yeah. I've been thinking about the assumptions thing, not with projected ownership, but with projections themselves, actually. But thinking about it with NBA, because I had this moment on opening night. Kaysen Wallace had, I think, like 47 FanDuel points or something on opening night. And I was like, I wonder what percentile a good NBA model would have had to have gotten to get to Kaysen Wallace he had 39 points in regulation. Like, would that have been his 99.99 percentile outcome? And I was just thinking that, like, kind of everyone involved in the whole exercise does take some things just for granted. And it doesn't matter what it is. Could be the projection, could be the ownership, could be that your sim product is working, could just all these things that you're taking for granted when you're putting your lineup in your daily fantasy contest of choice. And it's just very interesting how that like we just granted that Kirk Cousins was going to be able to do an impersonation of Michael Penix Jr. Like like your Falcon stuff. Were you building in any kind of just total systemic garbage for the Falcons last week?
No.
Yeah. Well, not to dive in, just more from a structural theory, like, because that feels like a very hard thing for a projections person to deal with. Like, you're missing your top quarterback, you're missing your top wide receiver. What impact does subbing out Drake London for Casey fucking Washington have for an offense? And then how does a data science nerd put that into one round number that your sim can use? That seems very hard.
It is hard. It's really hard to get these things right. I mean, the good news for something like NFL is there's usually so many games and so many things you can get to that oftentimes you can just say, I don't want to deal with this scenario and find something else, right? That's often an option for you.
I think the lesson is the QB is not like a 1-for-1 really, because there's too much tied to it. It's like too important in the chain that even changing something a little might mess up the whole thing. Maybe they don't like Kirk Cousins, like they don't want to play for him. Like, we don't really know.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you what you want to do in The Sims, but this is
like Majan had like his worst pass blocking game maybe ever, and that probably hurt his own stats more than.
Is Penix his boy?
I'm just saying. His pass blocking might have hurt his like receiving yards.
I haven't even gotten to that level yet of like, oh, these guys don't want to fucking play with Kirk Cousins. They want to play with Penix. Penix is their age. Penix is their boy.
They probably go out to dinner. Bros.
They're probably boys. They probably like played, I don't know, FIFA together or whatever. And like Kirk Cousins is like, you guys want to go to Kohl's? Like, that would suck.
It's more like, hey, my daughter will be ready for prom in the next 10 minutes. I'll get her down. It's like that kind of.
Or like Hollywood Brown is like awful.
Joe
has like
Flacco.
He had like the worst open score ever his last year with the Cardinals, and now he's just like he's just open all the time he probably loves his life now, whereas like he hated it playing with Kyler Murray in the Cardinals.
Dan was working on this very specific problem you're talking about, at least in my opinion, Dan. I mean, maybe you think you were working on something else, but the idea, the model you were building in my head, I thought was kind of trying to solve for this very issue or just like, let's say running back situations up in the air kind of, Davis, and like you think it's 70-30, Pete thinks it's 30-70, so, ETR thinks it's 50-50. There's a lot of uncertainty what those shares are going to be. How do you solve for that?
Yeah, I think there's just an unavoidable amount of human input for all of these things. And I say this as like someone who runs Screaming from objective sports analysis, right? I try to outsource as much as I can, but you can't avoid, like, even if you could create the Uber AI that could like hoover up everything on the internet, like there's still like human level judgments that matter. Like, how do you assign these probabilities of like which back is going to get the lion's share this week? Like, sometimes you just kind of have to guess what the coach wants to
or the variance number, or even the variance number.
even
So,
getting the range.
you can get- that's because let's say the running back situation, we're like, okay, we think it's higher variance. Okay, what should that number be? And then how do you solve when you're whatever you're doing in your sim, your play by play or whatever? You're guessing there then at least, yeah, I think you could still make a pretty good educated guess there where there's a baseline of variability. And like for Bijan or somebody who's like a bell cow, it's a lot lower, right? And then it's a lot higher in some situations. And then maybe you put your finger on, Adam puts his finger on the lever for a couple games where it's really high. And like, that's probably good enough.
Yeah, hopefully.
I thought the Falcon spot specifically was like really tricky too, spots like that, because Penix himself is such a big question mark still. Like when Joe Burrow gets hurt and gets replaced by Jake Browning, it's very obvious and easy to say, okay, this offense is worse. I don't know exactly how much worse, but it's clearly very much worse. Whereas like, I don't know if Kirk Cousins is worse than Penix. I don't know if they're similar. I don't know if he's like better or way worse. Like it was hard to even like necessarily make the assumption of like, yeah, we should really be docking the Falcons offense for Penix being out and replaced by Cousins.
Yeah.
So it's like there's just like baseline volatility there too.
In the distribution shape is weird and non-normal too, because like it's like a season long has this too, Davis, right? With like backup running backs and stuff like that is like there's like you can't just go, oh, I don't know, so let's just say 50-50. It's really this is 70-30, and like if somebody does well, they get the ball all the time. So like, what is that then his median, it might be 50-50, but actually
I would assume the reason no one will ever build a good or usable like best ball sim would be because like, how do you solve the problem of how often does Travis Etienne turn his ankle? It's like, okay, well, 10% of the time it's like actually unsolvable. I don't you need some kind of NASA supercomputer.
I think the best you can do is I've thought about this in my copious free time, is you create a model that lets you assign certain archetypes. So you say, okay, this running back is the guy, who's only really valuable if the starter gets injured in the middle of the season. This guy might, this other running back might get some work, but we're not really sure. These three guys, we don't really know which it's going to be. Like, and then you plug those in and see what it does and try to learn, like, how do I treat these kinds of situations? I think that's sort of the best you can do. Like, you can still model it and learn from it, even if you don't actually believe your own numbers. You're just trying to say, but what do you do with this kind of a player? How do we reason about it?
Yeah, like you can get a lot out of that without having to get as granular as like, okay, well, if HN gets hurt, what's the rushing split between Jalen Wright and Ollie Gordon? Like,
yeah, I think it's too hard. It's too much to ask somebody to do that for something like BBM. It would take us.
I think we should, though. I think we should get a government contract. I think we should get, whatever kind of processing power they have available, and just really get top people working on, is Blake Corum a good pick on a long enough timeline that feels like good use of available resource. I'm hip. I think I'd like to know the answer.
President Davis Maddock 2028.
That would definitely be my first executive act, would be getting all available.
Who's your VP?
It's a good question. Probably Pete, right? It's gotta be Pete.
He wouldn't be your VP. He wouldn't. I don't think he'd do it.
Pete wouldn't do it.
No.
Sad. This got me. This did get me. This did get me thinking about something else. This conversation, which is, as the field continues to like really, really condense on maybe not similar builds, but similar plays, is there any significant value in making, like, going through kind of like every team and adjusting projections on your own, even if you're not using the Run the Sims tool, which, shout out, does make it very easy to do, because you can just say, Adam and Davis and Utica are so dumb. There's no world where Caleb Johnson's getting 8% of the rushes. It should be 0 or whatever it might be. But that feels like one of the easiest ways to get on different builds and different stuff than if you're like significantly adjusting projections, even if you are not doing it ground up from your own model.
I was going to say too, I think it's related to the dupe thing too, Davis. It's kind of a portfolio question, the dupe thing too, like risk and how you want to build your portfolio. I guess if you're only entering one lineup, maybe you really just want to figure out how to dial in the amount of dupes for that singular lineup. But since it's so hard, I feel like focusing more on diverse plus EV portfolio is probably better time spent, and kind of probably the same for this question. I don't know how everyone else feels. Oh, wait, Davis, before you guys answer, VP should be Kitchen, and you guys can have like a Dick Cheney, Bush kind of mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Sorry. Ask the question again.
Oh, if you are, so like, let's just assume you're just kind of like a normal guy. You're not a data scientist. You're not going to build a model. You're not going to, you subscribe to your projection and sim provider of choice, but you are looking to not show up with Bijan Robinson and Darnell Mooney in your spy lineup. I do think there is value in you don't have to go through every team, but like making significant alterations to projections for guys, or maybe not. I don't know. Adam, what do you think?
I think if you're that guy that you described, then what Dan said is the way to do it. Just say like, I don't want to play the Falcons, and see what the best lineups are that don't have Bijan or Mooney, as opposed to like, again, if you're assuming that you're somebody that, isn't doing their own projections generally and blah, 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 like you have so much room to make unintended mistakes if you're going through each team and like trying to make adjustments, or even, trying to make Falcons adjustments specifically. I think your best bet if you're that guy is probably just like, I know I can make good lineups that don't have these guys. I don't trust these guys. I'm not going to play these guys. I'm going to play some other really good lineup that doesn't have them.
Yeah, it's reasonable. I don't know. I think I'm just trying to find an answer for how, like, was everyone right to play Darnell Mooney at 35% or whatever last week, or is that like historically bad?
It was just the high stakes though, wasn't it?
No, he was giga owned and everything.
I thought in like the mill he was like
it's still just the salary stuff. So just run the sim maybe once, see what it wants to give you, and without any sort of adjustment. And if it's showing like all this Bijan and Darnell Mooney, the ownership's probably wrong. Yes, I didn't have that issue. I mean, I could try to show what let me see. What I used. Can you see this?
Yeah. You want to put it up there, dude?
Yep.
This is what I had for like running backs, and it's probably not representative of the field. But it was just because like I ran it and it's like giving me 80% Bijan. And so maybe he was reported as being like 30% or something. So it's probably not going to be 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's probably the main difference as far as what I had versus what maybe my McCaffrey was lower too, but the same idea. It's just the McCaffrey was going to go to Bijan.
Yeah.
Whoops. We're adding that variable to our ownership projections, by the way.
And Davis, just to reiterate what Yuta was saying about salary, like you can have a funny dynamic in higher stakes where a not especially seeming great play gets overowned just because it gets you to so many highly projected combos and you don't care about dupes as much. So like the cheap piece that enables a lot of other stuff can actually get seemingly overowned in high stakes, but it's actually just a function of the salary and the size of the contest.
Right. It's only going to matter. You're only going to be more far off when the salary's too tight.
Did you say 80% in like an optimizer or 80% in an optimal?
Just like an initial run.
In a sim, like optimal or optimal rate in a sim or in a optimizer?
Optimizer.
Oh, okay.
But still, it's like the same idea.
It's pretty close, yeah.
Yeah.
I see in the DK Millie, I just pulled up the numbers. Mooney was 17.9%.
What we're changing, it's on the back end, I think, is so like come up with the ownership percentage, then run our sims, and then adjust the ownership based on what our sims say. And like
one like mildly interesting thing that I've noticed this year too is like obviously that does still impact it, but I think and I haven't tested it super closely, but I think and it makes sense given the field sizes and everything and number of casual players, but like there has been less of an overall like ownership move toward sims in NFL, I think, than there was in MLB, and then I think there's been in NBA so far. Ownership projection's been complete garbage. Like using my same MLB ownership formula for NFL, I was significantly over projecting ownership on a lot of the best plays. Whereas for MLB, it was really good.
That makes sense to me. I mean, it's just a numbers game, right? The number of the proportion of sim users is just going to be much higher in baseball than football. So that totally tracks.
Yeah, I think that is fair too. I had another thing, but I think I lost. Oh, actually, I did want to talk to Dan about the back end stuff, like what is happening when someone presses SimRunner Pro, because you mentioned something in our group message the other day about testing it. So I am just wondering what your current wave is with.
Well, I had a research project and it kind of flamed out, unfortunately. So it's a little bit back to the drawing board, which happens in research. That's why you call it research. Is sometimes it doesn't work. If you know it's going to work, it's probably not research. So. But what was your question? That was my work on NFL for like the last couple of months. I don't remember what I was talking about, to be honest with you.
I mean, you're kind of above my head in terms of the programming stuff, but I guess my question would be, are you happy with the current back end process? What are you wanting to change about it?
Oh,
what
okay. So we have a programmer who I've helped with some ideas. I haven't done the program myself. There have been a lot of improvements that are obviously better than what we had. So I'm very happy that those got done. There's some more stuff. Actually, I haven't checked in with this in a while. Brian, do you know where we are with the multi-sim in small field? Have they started on that?
No, we're still working on it.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that's going to be not too big of a lift. Just to remind people, this is the idea that in the smallest of contests, you have to be careful not to overfit your sims to a single field of lineups, because it's going to give you very distorted results. So if you have 100-man, you might find a lineup that pops to the top of the EV, but it's a mirage just because of the particular 99 other lineups in the contest in your sim makes this one lineup look really good, when in fact, you'd be better served by doing many different 100-man fields, and then this lineup will go back into the normal EV range. So we have that on the docket. I think that in terms of like short to medium term sim stuff, I think that's kind of the coolest thing that's to come, I would say.
It's the short and medium term is just boring shit, pretty much. Like, we got to get it faster. We got to get more efficient. There's some timeout issues in Showdown, which I hope we can fix today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Stupid shit like that. I want to add a couple easy filters. Like I want to put on there a minimum ownership, because sometimes these here's one thing we're talking about doing. We're actually probably talk about this after the show's over, is add like a sanity check. I don't know what you want to call it, filter or toggle or something like that, which will use the process we decide best to be determined to kind of like quickly analyze your 10,000 lineups or whatever it is, and raise like some red flags. And then maybe we'll have a filter option that you just quickly get rid of them if you trust this idea. This is the way the app was built. We didn't build this from the ground up. We bought the company, obviously. But I kind of like the idea of just doing all the lineups and then filtering afterwards.
Yeah.
Because our optimizer brains are like, no, you got to put the uniques in there. You got to put the stacks in there, blah, blah, blah. Like if you're doing like a play-by-play anyways, because a lot of that correlation should be built in. And then, you know, in the off season, I think, and Dan's still thinking about it, we do plan on revamping the play-by-play completely.
Yeah.
Get the whole thing to exactly where we want.
Yeah, I had forgotten about the red flags. It's a really good idea. I think none of this is a promise, but in an ideal world, you'd have like a tab where you could check all of the things you want flagged, and then all of your lineups, whenever they're generated, it'll just have like a little tooltip, a little red box. It's like,
that makes sense.
this lineup has 2 low projected tight ends in it. Are you sure? Like whatever it is, whatever thing, like maybe there's something about how you do things that leads you to something that you don't really like, and you want those things to pop out and make sure you really meant it. So
because it's Sims still, you know, they're not perfect, and some lineups can slip through the cracks no matter how many sim iterations you do or whatever, and they for some reason just sim really well, but maybe you don't like I don't know, like two tight ends for you know, maybe an onslaught in a super large field might for some reason just simmed it enough times to be plus EV to meet your 150 requirement, or 2 guys who are like 0.01% owned in the same lineup for some reason, just due to getting lucky and winning a few sims, just whatever. You could just kind of quickly filter those out. Yeah, but that's a good idea, Dan. Yeah, you could have like a toggle where all the ideas we mentioned that matter are pre-checked, and you can uncheck them.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
And then they could hide. The lineup can highlight. Maybe, I don't know. We'll have to. That doesn't really matter. We'll figure that stuff out.
It could be that the sim just knew about National Tight End Day, so you
or didn't know about
National
Tight End
Didn't
Day.
know Tucker Kraft was going to get 47 fucking fantasy points.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that, but the sim didn't.
But also, it's good to read it. I mean, we want things to be faster and better. The developers have already sped things up quite a bit in a couple spots, which is pretty nice to see. So I'm encouraged by that.
Yeah, still want it faster, but
always more.
Yeah,
more
speed's so important.
More cores.
Yeah.
More
and there's a few like bugs the guys have mentioned in Discord that we want to crank out to, like the lock button has like a little bit of a bug. Boring. Like I said, boring stuff for people watching YouTube.
Yeah.
As an aside from somebody that isn't involved in the back end, it has been, I think, good and reassuring that like the top sim ROIs generally, as long as you make sure that like ownership is updated and everything, are like in that, 80-90% range, as opposed to giving you a bunch of shit that's like 550%.
Yeah, I've talked about this a lot. It's sort of ironic, but if you're evaluating what sim site to use, like the lower the ROI numbers, the better probably. You're like, I'm going to shop around for the highest ROI lineup, and this one says I have 3,000% ROI, so I'm going to go with that. Yeah, I mean,
it's generally a sign that I've done something wrong. If my ROIs are too high, I'm like, okay, I need to take a couple steps back. I've overfit some data here at some point.
It's an immediate check on ownership first, and then that like you don't have some crazy projection on like a 0.1% owned guy.
Yeah, we found this in the golf show when Brian and I were doing that. Like it was like, and Davis too. Remember? Like it's like, oh, the numbers are still too high, and like, oh, this guy is popping.
Yeah, move Michael Thorbjornsson from 2% to 8%, and now he's a bad play.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of like a good way to iterate through, which you can kind of do with golf because there's only so many golfers.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you get that owner, as soon as you start dialing in the ownership, those ROI numbers drop significantly. It'll be interesting when we do the next roundtable, Adam, if the ROI drops with our ownership changes in Classic. We're going to start with Classic and then add it to Showdown. So in theory, those numbers should get lower. We'll see.
All right. Any of you guys, are you guys all playing NBA?
No.
Yes.
You enjoying what was it? It was the 10 o'clock start last night for Clippers Warriors.
I did not enjoy it because I had a very live lineup that needed James Harden in the second half. So I stayed up and watched the game. And then
right there with you. I had a $100,000 sweat. I just needed him to put up 55 points, which is a lot, but not not crazy. And he did
Depends on how what club he went to the night before.
Yeah. Yeah,
he put up like 20 something.
Yeah, mine was night slate. I needed 30. I needed like 30 in the second half to have a pretty good chance combined from Harden and Draymond. Harden had 27.5 in the first half. He finished at 29.5.
29.
Do you guys factor in gambling into your DFS lineups and whether the player?
Yeah, you need to figure out who has an $8 million tax lien that is currently going unpaid.
After some of the lineups he rolled out last night, I'm going to go with Ty Lue.
I'm just wondering why my home games with NBA coaches, I just keep losing. I just can't figure it out for the life of me.
8 p.m. Pacific time is not cakewalk. Also, 0 pitches of the World Series have been seen by yours truly.
I don't think I started watching Game 3 until maybe like the 9th inning. So I still watched a full baseball game until like 3 a.m.
Insanity.
We might have an NBA announcement coming soon. Teaser.
There you go. There's a tease. There's a listen. There's a reason to go to endgamesyndicate.com, get the professional roundtable video without me yucking it up. If you ever want to ask in-depth model questions, in-depth math questions, without having to have me bumblefuck through it to try and explain it to Dan, that is where you go to do that. Everyone, runthesims.com. A lot of promo codes will get you 10% off. Promo code Swoley, promo code Endgame, promo code Endgame10. Lots of codes will get you 10%
Do they?
off. They did. I don't.
Pete, Neil, those two work as well.
The Swolecast code does work. Someone just used it the other day.
Yeah.
I love somebody came in Discord the other day. It was like, are there any promo codes? And Brian gives them like 3. And then he comes back. He's like, okay, I used this other one that's like completely different. And that also works.
People want the Ship My Money DFS NBA show. I'll have to make you a new thumbnail for it.
Yeah, that might be coming.
Okay, there you go, everyone.
Every time Underdog tweets a new update, I become less and less interested. But that might be coming.
I really liked Mitchell Robinson injury management resting on open night. That one where I was just like, man, I have to defend the NBA against all these people all the time, and Mitchell Robinson is injury management resting on opening night. This is not, it's not what I want. All right, everyone. Endgamesyndicate.com, runthesims.com. We'll be back with you guys next month with this program. If you want more, this is going to continue at endgame.com. Later, everybody.